All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday morning to talk about toilet training. My name is Amy DeShazo. I am the Autism Coordinator with Smart Start. For those of you that are new to the Guiding Parents to Services program, this is a program provided to you at no cost for families that have children with autism or suspect that they have concerns about autism and have a child under the age of 5 years old and live in Mecklenburg County. For this particular training, we did open it up a little bit past Mecklenburg County and past this age range. If you are not in Mecklenburg County or your child is over 5 years old, I am happy to provide you with some resources in your area to be able to get further autism information. For those of you, again, that are new to our program, I run a weekly information session that includes various topics related to autism. And then we go into a parent discussion group. This is your tribe of people. These are the people that are going through the same things that you are, and having the ability to bounce ideas and share ideas with people who are going through the same thing can be a valuable tool. I am also available for telephone and email consultations. So I look forward to getting to know those of you that I haven't met yet, and welcome again to those of you that I have. So for this morning, I'm very happy to introduce our speaker, Chris Everhart, who is coming to us live from Virginia. He is the Executive Director for Behavior Health and Wellness Center, which is an ABA company. And they provide services in Virginia, Georgia, California, and now in North Carolina. They have a new clinic that opened in the university area. Chris has over 15 years experience as a professional counselor and working with families with children with autism. He's excited to be here this morning, and I'm excited to have him. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. And Chris, you are on mute, so just there you go.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
And let me stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Let me get my slides up here and then attempt to share my screen, as Amy just mentioned. Let's see. You let me know if I'm not doing it. There we go. All right.
Beautiful.
Shared. Where's my slides? There we go. Okay. So is it up?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. As Amy mentioned, I'm Chris Everhart. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I am the director of our program in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have a clinic-based setting, and we do community-based work as well with children diagnosed with autism. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about toilet training. Before I get started, a couple things about my presentation to kind of keep in mind as we go through. This is meant to be interactive, so do not hesitate to jump in and ask a question, or if you don't feel comfortable speaking, just type it in the chat box and then Amy will jump in and ask your question for you. During each slide, try to, instead of worrying about if we get into some terms that seem kind of clinical or wordy or fancy, don't think necessarily about the term, just try to soak in the concept and think, how does this apply to my child? Why is he talking about this? If he's talking about it, there must be something that somehow ties in as to how it's going to help you during toilet training. The other part of this is that this is not meant to be intensive psychoeducation. We're not at school right now. This is meant to be just some tips and starting points for those of you who are either beginning toilet training or have tried with not great success, or have had some success, but you're hitting some roadblocks. The goal is to kind of figure out where you are in that journey and help you at exactly that part of that journey. So maybe you're intimidated to get started, so let's find a starting point. Or we got halfway, but we're kind of stuck. Let's figure out how to get over that hurdle that you're in at that moment. So, and then lastly, enjoy. This is meant to be fun. This is meant to give you confidence. I hope that you leave this presentation today with at least one thing that you can say, I can go do that today. I can go try that with my child today. That's the goal. And then finally, before I go, and then we'll go, is follow up. I'm available afterwards if you want to reach out to Amy and schedule an individual consult, or if we don't get through what you needed today, or you try some of these things and you start to make progress but you get stuck, please reach out to us, and no charge or anything like that, just for free. We can do a follow-up consultation, will be available. So without further ado, let's get into Toilet Training 101. So on the right, you'll see our table of contents. That's all the slides we're going to be going through today. So if we get halfway through and you're like, how much longer before I get to ask my question about just my child? We've only got X number of slides to go through, so we'll get there. But again, jump in at any time and ask a question about the content we're talking about. All right, so the first thing you want to do before you start toilet training is obviously you want to ask yourself, are we ready for toilet training? Is my child ready for toilet training? Am I ready for toilet training? Well, in order to get yourself ready, the first thing you have to do is take a deep breath and relax. As you know, your children, as well as we all know our own, is they can pick up on what we're feeling and what we're sensing. And if you're coming into this with anxiety, then I promise you, your child's going to have anxiety and be heightened right there along with you. So get yourself in a mode where you're feeling calm and confident and ready to go each time you want to start out toilet training. Now that we've relaxed, it's time to get to work. And I say that because this is work. So my advice to you when you're starting out toilet training is to set aside an amount of time that you can truly devote to this. So whether that's, hey, we're going to try for an hour a day, once a day, your plan could be to we're going to try for 4 hours one day and follow our plan, or we're going to try in the mornings, or we're going to try on the weekends. Whenever it is you decide your family and you are ready to work and be focused on this task, set everything else aside, and this is the task that we're focused on for that duration of time. And then lastly, now that we've relaxed and then we've also reminded ourselves that it's work, we got to make it fun too. If this is a chore, or if this is adversive, or if this is painstaking to you or your child, it's not going to go well. You're going to be pulling your hair out, and at the end of the day, it's not going to be good. So come in with it of, hey, we're excited. We're going to learn a new skill today. We're doing something that's going to be super fun, and there's going to be a lot of positive reinforcement for both you and your child that you're going to build into this plan. All right, switching over to your child. Is your child ready? The first thing I always encourage everyone to think about before you jump into trying to use behavior or shape behavior or teach a new skill is we always have to rule out medical. And what that means is if there's something medically going on with your child, then there's no amount of behavioral support or technique or strategy that's going to help you have success with this. So when I say that, a couple examples, I've worked with kids that had some GI issues, as in like blockages or something like that. And we realized that this was very painful for them. So, or another example is if you see a lot of like digging, or your child is showing very intensive pains in certain areas, or trying to initiate a bowel movement on their own in some way that seems out of the ordinary, please check with your pediatrician first and get them a checkup and make sure that there's not something medically going wrong first. Moving past that, the number one sign that your child's ready is that they notice that they're wet or they're soiled. You know, they look down, they see it, they've started to acknowledge it. They may go hide in a corner, they may run out of the room, they may pull your attention, they may pull their diaper off. This is a sign that the toilet training's ready. It's I'm making a connection that this is happening with my body. That's a good indicator. Another good indicator and kind of checkbox is that they respond to reinforcement. And that's just a fancy way of saying when you offer them something they like, they light up for it, or they reach for it, or they say, I want something, or indicate with a verbal sound and reach for something, or you show them something that they really enjoy, like a favorite toy or a favorite food, or your attention lights them up and they gravitate towards it. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take that desire to get something and we're going to use that to encourage them to do a behavior that we want that's going to lead to toilet training. I hope that makes sense. And I'm sure I'll go much more into reinforcement later. And then lastly, they engage in responses to some level of prompt hierarchy. And again, that's just fancy words for when you try to get them to do something, they can then do it. So whether that's responding to you pointing at something, or a gesture of some kind, or you modeling something, or you physically encouraging them to walk in this direction, and then they take that physical prompt, they respond to your interactions with them. That's a good kind of way to go down the line and say, okay, my child can do all this. And so we're ready to start toilet training. Questions about, am I ready or is my child ready? Anyone want to start us off with a question? Not yet. Okay. Let's go.
Chris, what if your child's not verbal yet?
That's okay. Any kind of indicator, it doesn't matter if your child's speaking or not, anything that they're responding and lighting up to you, or they're showing any kind of interactions with it. Talking is not a prerequisite skill and prerequisite skill just means a skill before you can do the next thing, walk before you run type thing. Talking is not a prerequisite skill for toilet training. You can still get toilet training without talking. Alrighty, tools. We got to have stuff to help us get the work done, right? So this is not an exhaustive list, but I would encourage you to just go online and type in, what are some things I might need to do toilet training, and make sure that if you have a good checklist of everything you need available in your home to set your environment up for success, is the way I say it. So some tools, I'm actually going to do this slide backwards. In hindsight, I wish I'd put the left on the right and the right on the left. So set the environment. Do you have reinforcers available for your child? Meaning, do you have those things that they like so much readily available? Because we're going to use those tools we're going to use things to reinforce. And some examples of some good reinforcers, you know what your child likes, but go through and sit down and make a list, and maybe put them in order from 1 to 5, and say, this is my child's favorite thing to play with, or to have, or to eat, or to activity to enjoy. And say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for my 4-year-old right now, it's iPad. But close second is Skittles. And I guess maybe I'm not giving my wife and I enough credit. Maybe mommy and daddy are number 1 and 2. I'm not sure. I hope so, but you never know. So I can write down in order, what are the things that are most reinforcing to my child? What are the things that make him the most happy, make her the most happy? And let's get those things set up and readily available, because we're going to use those to offer a prompt to your child. And then when they do the thing you want them to do, you're going to offer them the reinforcer. You're going to give them that thing. So if it's mommy and daddy is number 1, then maybe you have a favorite song you sing when they do a certain activity. That would be an example of a reinforcer. Or maybe it's M&Ms, and just as a side tip, you can cut your M&Ms into littler pieces if you don't want to just give your child 20 M&Ms in an hour when they're trying to toilet train. So are you using a food reinforcer for them doing what they're doing? Is it a attention from you? Is it an activity? Is it, I worked with a kid that had a portable DVD player, and he could watch his favorite show while he sat on the potty, but that was the only time we let him have the DVD player when he was in the clinic for the day. So you're picking which reinforcers you're listing them out, you're making sure they're ready and available. You're kind of even putting them in order. What's the most valuable and what's maybe not as high up on that list? Okay. Secondly, you want to have your little potty, or the potty cover. If you're using one of the little potty covers, you want to have it all set up and ready. We don't want to go in and have this moment where your child's going to have their first time using the potty and, oh, I forgot to get everything set up. So set up your environment. Obviously, toilet paper. Your reinforcers are already located in the bathroom if possible. So you might have a jar of M&Ms already sitting in there, so that when they have that moment of success, you're not going, oh, let me run into the next room and grab your reinforcer and then come back and give it to you. And they might not make the connection that what I just did is the goal of what we're trying to do. So you want to have your reinforcer delivered as quickly as you can while they're doing the thing you want them to do. So prompting tools already ready. I'm going to get the prompting tools on the other side. Preferred drinks. If we're working on urinating, you're going to allow your child to have as much of that drink as they want, leading up to your scheduled time to potty train, because we want to make sure they have to go, right? So you want to, that's kind of just a smart start list of things that you would go with. Prompting tools these are things that might encourage your child to engage in the activity less reliant on you, or just to, some of these tools might even be to cue you. So myself, I live on timers and I live on visual aids. And what does that mean? So we have alarms set. I have to be at this meeting at this time. This isn't something that's just for our kiddos. These are real life tools we use. So one thing you can do with a timer is, let's say, for example, you've decided to do 1 hour of toilet training with 15-minute trips to the toilet, which is a number you can pick, but you gauge your child. Maybe it's 30 minutes before each trip. Maybe it's your child is at 1 hour between each trip. Setting that timer puts both them with a cue, so it's something that goes off that's not you saying go to the potty, although you will, but it also reminds you, and it makes sure that you're keeping yourself on schedule. Hey, it's going to be every 15 minutes. So I set a timer for 15 minutes. We go to the potty, we come back to our activity, I reset my timer, and it keeps me on track. A visual aid, I use my calendar. I have to know when I have to be where. You can do the same thing with your child, except you break it down for them. If your child responds to seeing pictures, you can go online. You can find them all over Pinterest. There are ones you can buy. There are ones you can make. They're really simple, but they list each step of going to the potty. So, and they're cartoons, so they're they're appropriate. But one picture might be pants down, and one picture might be toilet paper, and that keeps you on track with the steps. And you can indicate time to flush, and you point to the picture of flushing. So token boards, I won't get into too much of that, but it's just a way to stretch out your reinforcer. Modeling, showing your child, this is how we sit. That's not too silly to do. Saying, look, I'm sitting, look, dad's sitting. And I'll use that as the end to say, I encourage boys to always, when you start toilet training, start sitting down. You can work your way to standing up and peeing. We can get to that one later, but showing, sit down. And then physical prompting means how you guide your child. So you can pick any step and you use partial physical prompting. And this isn't restraining. This is guiding them to do the skill instead of you. So if it's time to flush, instead of you just saying flush and hoping that they know what to do, you guide their hand to flush the toilet on their own. Hand over hand is the way to guide them through physical prompting. Questions? I just talked for a while. Come on, someone open us up. All right, I'll keep going. You make them talk, Amy. I'm here to help. Okay, step by step. What does this mean? Step by step is you want to break down each individual step in toilet training and figure out where your child is in those steps. Okay, so if you've already started and you've gotten to this one part and they can't do this part, that's the part you want to focus on reinforcing the most. The first step is just walking to the bathroom, right? And that is something to be reinforced. If you haven't started at all, that's the number one thing you want to focus on, is walking to the bathroom together and going in and it not being an adverse experience, a negative experience for your child. You want them to be able to go in, and this is a fun thing. This isn't, because think about the bathroom. It is kind of a scary place. The lighting's weird. It's cold. We only go in there for certain activities. And they're not usually like exciting, fun activities. There's no TVs in there usually, or what have you. So try and make this space a really exciting space for them to go to. That's one way you want to engineer your environment. And then you want to break down each step. And I've done a sample of steps that you can try to hone in. And this, you can whittle this down to 4 steps if that's appropriate for your child. You could expand this to 20 steps if you're really getting stuck. So this is I call it a chain example, because each link in the chain needs success from the previous link. You have to do the first one before you can do the second and third and fourth and so forth. The other example I use to just kind of frame it up is, imagine you're making a sandwich. Like, okay, I'm making a peanut butter jelly sandwich. The first thing I do is I go and I get the bread. Then you know, the next step is put peanut butter on the bread. Well, wait, I didn't get the peanut butter. I haven't opened the bread. I didn't take the lid off. I didn't get out a knife. So really going through in your brain and remembering that there are all these little minor steps that go in between, and you're not sure which one your child might be getting hung up on. So before you even start to implement it, or if you're stuck on a certain step, go back and really just take a couple minutes and write down, what are all the steps we're going to need to do to successfully toilet train. So I'll just read through these, briefly, because you can see them. But the first thing is the prompt to show that we're going to the bathroom. So whether that's your timer goes off, and you want to, the reason I keep coming back to the timer is the goal is to eventually get your child to become independent going, right? To initiate, to say or indicate by walking or gesturing to their body that I need to go. So a timer removes you as the prompt, but it's okay if it's you. Start with you, but eventually you can build into a timer as the cue that says, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. Something natural that comes in the environment is always the ideal, but it can be you, or the timer goes off and then you give the prompt. But having that extra impetus in the environment is very helpful, I find. Two, just walking to the bathroom. That's something that's I know from my 4-year-old. Sometimes he requires a little bit of physical prompting just to start walking. He'll be so into whatever he's into that I have to say, and he'll indicate to me. He'll say, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom, but then he won't get up. And I'll give him a little guide. Come on, let's go. And then that little bit of momentum sends him on his way. Undressing, so pulling down pants. That's something that obviously is a step. And be mindful with all of these steps to ask yourself, how much am I doing and how much are they able to do? Because that's a skill too. Being able to pull your pants down is a skill set, and it has to be taught. It has to be explained and shown that this is how you do it. Obviously, voiding is the number one goal we're going for here, but also think about how just attempting to go is a great start for your child. Just them being willing to sit on the potty for whatever duration you think is appropriate. And this is where my timer comes back in. I usually pull out my timer on my phone, and I will keep track of what is that threshold for my child to be able to sit on the potty, and don't overdo it. Always try to increase it a little bit. But when I say a little bit, I mean just a few extra seconds, maybe an extra 15 seconds here and there. But if your child's threshold for sitting is 2 minutes and they can do that successfully, that's a home run. 2 minutes is awesome. 2 minutes is something to work for. But if it's 30 seconds to start, if it's 15 seconds to start, that's okay. Reinforce that, hey, you sat down, we walked to the bathroom, you sat there, maybe they went, maybe they didn't, but rewarding that attempt. And we'll talk a little bit more on the next couple slides about a difference between an attempt and a success. Excuse me. Wiping or allowing you to wipe. I reinforce just allowing you to wipe them is something like, hey, good, this is us wiping. Even if it's just that verbal praise, that's something to be rewarded. Flushing or being prompted to flush. So I talked about that hand over hand. That's a step. Redressing, washing hands. Even if you're doing hand over hand with them to wash their hands, you're showing them the routine. You're building in each step, and you're focusing on each step as you go, and getting through each of the following steps so that it becomes memory. Just the next thing we do is wash our hands, and then obviously returning to the activity. So like I said, you could break this down into 4 steps if it's appropriate for your child. You could expound this into 20 steps if you needed to. If you're really getting stuck somewhere, or you're just starting out, figure out which steps they have already mastered and start with the next one is the one we focus on during that day. I'll get into that more. I think it's on the next slide. Hold on. Planning. No, hold on. In 2 slides, I'll come back to this more. So does anyone have a question, or what question would it be if you wanted to jump in and talk about steps or writing this out? Or is it clear? Maybe someone just type in the chat box, it's clear. And that would make me feel better too. Sorry, I'm adjusting to this virtual world. I'm used to being in the room with everyone.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
We were given this from my son's teacher.
Okay.
Everyone can see it's like it's a Velcro sticker. stating first, that he has to sit on the pot and then he gets his treat.
Mhm.
We've been at it for a couple months, but the last couple of weeks have been a lot of progress to where we were getting notes from the teacher that he's going without issues at school, but it's not transitioning to home seems to be our issue.
Okay. So on this particular slide, if you were to pick which step he can get to, what step would you pick?
I'd say maybe 3, because he'll go sit on the pot, but he's not undressing himself.
Okay.
So he does prompt himself, and he'll go to the bathroom and sit on the potty at times. But
Okay.
getting himself dressed isn't an issue, but undressing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So again, you want to when you're writing out your steps, you want to build on each of the previous steps. And so it's perfect that you're clearly very in tune with this, and I can kind of sense from your voice that you're getting a little bit the patience is starting to kind of wear thin because you're not getting the progress, right? When you said that he can come in, they're having some success in school. I know some schools are a little more open and some schools are a little more closed door. How open are they to letting you come in and watch the routine that they do?
I'm thinking before COVID, it would have been possible, but currently they're not allowing parents even to get out the car.
Oh, wow.
Getting to the classroom, I don't think would be
Hmm.
possible at this time.
That is a challenge I hadn't thought of. Yeah. So, and again, I'm just trying to get creative here, but the number one thing, and this is a great thing to jump in, and I don't know if I'm necessarily going to get to your question at this juncture, but I think I will in 2 slides. But while we're talking about the school, because that's the part that you brought up, that if you're having success in one environment, but you're not having success in another environment, which is what I think you're saying you're experiencing. I'm sure another parent in this presentation has this exact experience you're talking about. The number one thing you want to do is you want to try to replicate it as much as you can across settings. So figuring out which way are they prompting him, what are the reinforcers they're giving him, what is the interval, if you will, like how spaced out, how often does he go to the bathroom, who prompts him to the bathroom, who takes him. Try to gather all of this information and think of whomever you trust the most at his school, whoever you just in your head, this is the person that I think of that is keeping him safe, and I really trust my child with this person. See if you can get a conversation with that person and ask them to do this exact step by step and talk to you about what they are doing. And you want to try to replicate that in the home as much as you can, because if he's having success there, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It means that something's different. It means they're doing something slightly different than what you're doing, and we got to figure out what it is. And it could be any number of things. And I can't really answer what it is, but you do your step-by-step sample of this is what we're doing and this is where we're getting stuck, and then get them to do the same thing with you if you can, and then figure when you get down to that step this is where they're getting success and here's where we're not, what are you guys doing at this exact moment, and tell me so that I can do it at that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand. I
Um,
felt kind of odd trying to ask the teacher to record it and send it to me. I felt like we'd be crossing into a gray area to where I don't want to cost anybody a job or anything.
it's funny you say that, because in the back of my head, that's exactly what I was thinking is, could we record it? And yeah, this is one of those fine line areas. And, it is tough. It's tough during this time because I prefer you just be able to go witness it and then be able to, jump in and say, here, now you do it, and just kind of switch it off like that. But we are trying to get through this time. So, I'm trying in my head, I've been brainstorming as I've been talking and listening to you talk, is like, what can we do as a substitute for video? Because obviously that's not, but, even if it was just, I don't know if they could be on the phone, but something's not matching up, something that they're doing. And you just got to be a detective. You have to get in there and figure out what's the thing that they're doing that I'm not doing at that exact step. And you'd be surprised. It could be the things that can be what it is when you actually have that conversation can be something that totally shocks you. It might not be how you're prompting. It might be, I've worked with kiddos, and I'm not saying that this is in your scenario, but it could, you have to really be a detective, because lighting changes, the time of day, any sort of little thing that's different can sometimes throw your child off. And that's not your fault, that's not the school's fault, that's just a symptom of autism, is that I need everything to be just so if they're having that success, just play detective and get in there and figure out what are they doing at this step that we're not doing. All right, thank you for that question.
Another thing to think about is the difference between the bathroom at school and the bathroom at home. There's probably a lot more distractible things at home because you probably have a shower, you probably have other things that are sitting on the sink. There may be other toys that go into the bathtub with you. So there's a lot of other stimulus that's in your bathroom at home that's not at school. Another thing to think about is the height of the toilet. A lot of the time in the schools, they have a much, much lower profile toilet where the children are able to keep their feet on the ground. If you are using a small potty at home and it's on the ground, then obviously their feet are on the ground. If you're using the regular adult potty, having a step stool or something that can ground their feet, that they don't just feel that their feet are dangling, can be helpful as well.
All right, thank you for that question, and thank you for opening this up to some discussion. Let's talk about planning. Hey, look, we have someone joining us right now. Planning. So one of the things to think about is you have to build a plan, and you have to have a beginning, middle, end to your plan, and you want to make it as how's the way to say it, replicable as possible, so you can repeat your plan with the most success you have. Because the number one thing, and I really mean this, the number one thing that has brought me success in toilet training with children over the years is routine, routine, routine. Did we do it the same way every single time? That's going to be the number one jumping off point to make you the most successful, is doing it the same every time. So the first thing we already covered was to make a plan and figuring out, where were we in our step-by-step chain? Where's the part that we're hitting a roadblock? And that's the part that we're going to focus on the most today. Number two, assign the roles. Who is doing each step? And this one is, there's two parts to assigning the roles. If you have multiple people around your child during toilet training, pick a leader for each part of the routine. Now, that could mean that one person does it each attempt, and then you switch off and take turns. For my wife and I'll use the example of my son's bath time routine. There's certain parts that she's better at than me, and there's certain parts that he responds better to me. So we switch off during certain parts. But when we're trying to get him to be as independent as possible, we take turns as who's talking to him. So imagine yourself in a very important meeting or at work or out at lunch with friends, and two people are talking to you at the same time, and your brain's trying to focus in two directions at once. It can be very overwhelming. So pick a voice and who's talking during each step. That will help you both with consistency, but it will also, kind of clear the air for your child's brain, so that I don't have three people saying, sit down, go do this, It's just one person at each step saying, sit on the potty now. That very concise one voice. And then you might have, one person's better with helping with pants, and then they jump in and do that. So assign the roles, who's doing what in each step, and then set a schedule, decide when it's happening, and make it happen. So Saturday morning, we're going to a presentation. Saturday afternoon, we're going to work on toilet training, and then commit to these times and say, okay, during this 3 hours or this 1 hour or this day or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, these are the times we're going to commit that this is going to be our focus, so that we make sure we're replicating it. We're doing the same thing every single time. Next slide is a sample plan. You don't have to it doesn't have to be drawn out on a board like this. You can just write it down or however you see fit. But this is an example of some of the things that you want to think about during each session or scheduled time or attempt, whatever you want to call each time you attempt to toilet train. So the schedule, how often are we going to go to the potty? So 1 try per hour on the 15s. That's an example. You might pick on the 30s. You might say, no, my child, if I gave him 3 juice boxes, he's not going more than 15 minutes without needing to go try. So you might say every 15 minutes might be on your schedule. What are the reinforcers we're using? Are we using, we're using an iPad and we're using candy. Maybe we're saying every time he or she does something really good or does the step on their own, like walk to the bathroom, you might give them a piece of candy and then they can look at the iPad or be on the phone while they're actually sitting on the potty. Then what is the skill we're targeting? I picked because I think this is the one skill you want to try to get to in every attempt is sitting on the toilet. And what is the duration that my child can handle sitting on the toilet? I put 5 minutes there. That's a really long time. For a child that say, I get this question a lot, what if my child won't sit on the toilet long enough to even have an attempt? I'll say, try offering a 1-to-1 reinforcer. So every time they sit on the potty, they get, if you're doing candy, they get the piece of candy. And just that attempt to sit down, that's progress. That's a step towards, and then you just want to try to drag out that time. If you're hitting 2 minutes, that's really good. But you might start with 15 seconds. You might start with 30 seconds. You don't want it to be adverse. You don't want your child to start associating it with something negative. And so you start small and then try and drag it out and make it longer. This is the term I was talking about in the last one. What are we reinforcing? What are we rewarding? Are we rewarding that they attempted to do it, or are we rewarding accuracy? So the difference between accuracy and an attempt is, I've used the metaphor like if you ever did if you ever did math probes in school, where you try to do as many of the problems as you can in a row. Are we rewarding that you got a bunch right, or are we rewarding how many you tried to answer? So is it accuracy or attempt? Is it that they voided in the toilet that we're waiting for the reward at this point? Or are we just rewarding that they went and they sat on the potty and good try, and then we move on? And then who's the leader in the situation? Who's in charge that can say, okay, this isn't going so great, let's take a break from this? Or who's the one who's delivering the prompting to your child, is saying, do this, or I'm helping you do this. So this is a sample of a plan that if you write it all out, then it helps you to be able to follow it each time. This is just as much for you as it is for your child. This is what we're going to do in each step to keep us on track. All right. Anything else on that before? I'm going to jump into a little bit of clinical stuff, some terms that I hope you'll enjoy learning about. And then that will be pretty much us getting to the end of our presentation. So 2 more slides, 2 more content slides to go, and then we'll open it up to questions about your child again. So punishment versus reinforcement. When you see punishment, we all have certain associations with punishment, and reinforcement may be a new term for you. Try to just, if you can, throw everything that you might conceive about this as good or bad or anything like that out the window. I'm going to talk about these terms in strictly clinical, behavioral, academic terms. So when we talk about reinforcement and we talk about punishment, there's 2 types. There's positive reinforcement, but when I say positive, don't think good. Think addition sign. Think adding something. I'm adding something to this situation. So, and then negative is don't think bad. Think I'm taking something away. So in this presentation, I'm only going to go over positive reinforcement and a little bit about positive and negative punishment. So the term reinforcement, all this means is we want to increase the likelihood that something's going to happen again. So it doesn't mean it definitely will, but it's what we hope it will. So positive meaning plus sign, adding something, reinforcement, make it happen again. So when I say positive reinforcement, all I mean is I'm adding something to the situation to hope that the behavior will happen again in the child. So if it's walk to the bathroom, and as we're walking to the bathroom and your child jumps up and is dashing to the bathroom with excitement, that's a good thing. So I'm saying, good walking to the bathroom. I'm giving positive praise. I'm adding praise to hope that they'll be excited and want to go to the bathroom again. That's positive reinforcement. And we always want to use positive reinforcement. I'm going to circle back to that. Punishment is strictly, in science terms, not in, I know real world, we all think of punishment, but punishment is strictly to stop a behavior from happening. So an example of a punishment would be a timeout. Let's say, and I'm not, this is why it's not good or bad, right or wrong. I use timeouts with my son. And what I do is I use what's called negative punishment, where I remove something to get him to stop doing something. So when he's having a tantrum and yelling, I put him on timeout and I remove my attention from him. That's the negative. I subtract my attention, and I tell him, I'll talk to you again when you're able to talk in a calm voice. So I'm trying to get him to stop yelling by removing attention. Now that we've kind of briefly touched on those two terms, you never want to use punishment procedures during toilet training. Why? Because punishment is to stop a behavior from occurring. During a reinforcement procedure, we're trying to encourage a new behavior to happen more. So we want to see a skill set emerge. We're trying to teach a replacement skill. Stopping walking to the bathroom wouldn't get us anywhere. We want to increase walking to the bathroom. And the last example I'll use that always made the difference make sense to me is if you are at the swimming pool and the lifeguard says, stop running. Okay, that's not telling me what you want me to do. That's telling me what you want me to stop doing. You didn't say, don't do a cartwheel, don't jump in the pool, don't throw things, don't do a backflip. You said, stop running. Stop running doesn't tell me what you want me to do. Instead, we want to turn it into walk or walk to me or whatever it is. So you always want to add in the replacement skill. So we don't want to use aversives. Punishment is to stop something from occurring. It doesn't teach a new skill. But reinforcement, it incorporates teaching the new skill involved in it. And I'm just touching on these. If a lot of this stuff goes in one ear and out the other, no big deal. This is just a baseline of some terms that I promise you in your journey, you're going to be hearing a lot. So, kind of getting used to what is positive reinforcement in a science-y kind of way is really important. I'm going to kind of yada through that to this next part because this is where you apply it. This is where it actually makes sense. So what am I reinforcing? What are the skills? And this is back to our kind of checklist. You want to be positively reinforcing. So adding something to increase that happening again for every single step that they do something that you want them to do. So just going to the bathroom, even if it's just a verbal praise, good job walking to the bathroom. Pull pants down, good job, pants down. Sitting on the potty, here, have some candy, watch some iPad, whatever it is, you want to focus on whatever that most difficult part that's occurring, and you want to really just kill it with kindness. You want to keep jumping in and adding something really positive to that one step that's giving your child trouble. Amy, that's where I've gotten to in this presentation as a jump start. This is just a starting off point. And before we switch, I do want to give one little added disclaimer. This is Toilet Training 101. This is where to start, or if I'm having trouble, what are some tips I can use to focus on that difficult area? If you get really trapped and you're going online and you're reading stories that aren't good and are making you nervous, or you're seeing these very, very intensive programs, I would encourage you to reach out to a provider, whether it's a behavioral health provider like myself, or your school, or Amy, or someone for consultation, that if you're considering that my child's needing this really intensive level of support for this stuff, as in someone's getting hurt, or there appears to be a lot of pain or something like that, please don't feel like you or your child is a failure to ask for help. It's totally okay to ask for help on these. And that's why we're all here during this training, is to just get support from others. So now I'll turn it over to Amy to moderate any Q&A about whether it's about your specific child or any of the content that we went over on the slides. And I said, go Amy, and now she's not talking. So I guess she's still muted.
Sorry, for some reason it wasn't unmuting. As I was watching at the screen and watching everybody kind of nodding their head along, so I'm glad to see that it was making sense to people. But I know I've talked with different families about some of the challenges that they're having with their own child. So we're welcoming you to talk about your child and your family situation right now. And no question is off limit. We are talking about pottying. So we understand that everybody uses the potty, and that's okay.
So at this part, feel free to say, well, what do I do if, or what do I do when, or when we tried this happened. That's the type of questions that we're looking for.
So here's a quick question for you, Chris. If my child uses the iPad or phone all day long to be watching videos or things like that, is that a good reinforcer to keep using while they're trying to potty train?
So that's a trick question, because if it works, it works. And if you're saying that my child will sit for any duration I ask them when they have access to the iPad, then by all means use it. However, the more you have access to something, the more your child has a particular reinforcer, the less reinforcing it becomes. It's called satiation is the fancy word for it, but it's just the more I have it, the less I really care about having it. So my advice is, when you're picking your reinforcers, is to pick something that is very high value to them, something they really like, but something that you can only keep aside for toilet training, just for this one activity. This is the only time you get access to that one thing that you really like. So you may not want to pick their favorite thing. You may want to pick their second favorite thing, or third favorite thing, or fourth favorite thing. But you want to try to have something that they can look forward to. So I'll just use Skittles because it's my son's and I's favorite candy when we were toilet training, which we still are in some capacity. He's 4. I mean, he's not totally independent, and he can't make it through the night without, a wet diaper. But, Skittles, the jar of Skittles was only in the bathroom. That's the only time he ever got Skittles, when we were first really trying to teach him that that's where you go. So I would pick a reinforcer that's just for this activity, is the best advice for that question.
I have a question.
Welcome. Hi.
Hi. So kind of, going through the steps, they were great, and I understand that. So my big question is, I think my son's I think he's ready. I think he's shown some of the signs, but I think he's on kind of the early end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm looking at all the steps that, we need to go through, my question is, do you see any negative or positive versus going straight to like cloth underwear or staying using like pull-ups? I know that's controversial, whether autism or not autism, but to me, if I have all these steps to make it through, do I really need to make it painful along the way before we kind of reach some consistency?
Sure. So 2 things, and I promise I'll actually answer the question you asked. But number one, when you're just starting out, the number one thing to focus on is the routine. And then number 2 is making that bathroom a fun place to go. And so even if you're not seeing a lot of progress at first, if you can somehow build into your child's head that this is a fun thing to do, this is just a fun game we play, and then that will set you up for success when, if you find out that you're not truly ready, when you are, those things will really set you up. As far as diaper versus underwear, so I err on the side of what works best for you, because we have enough challenges living in the world of autism to not put extra problems on our plate. So for me, there's kind of 2 ways to answer that question. One is, what is your threshold for cleaning up a mess? And mine is not very high, I will admit that. And I know that sounds kind of funny as someone who, I've done toilet training with, I don't know, dozens. And I mean, I don't know how many kids I've worked with. I've worked with kids in every environment: home, community, private school, public school, residential, so I put myself in messy situations, but I don't have a high threshold for it. So for me, that diaper wasn't, and my son, like, he was in the diaper up until the last possible moment. And then my in-laws decided one weekend he was switching to underwear that weekend. And so then he's in underwear. And moving forward, that's what he was. And now we have accidents in underwear. So okay, there you go. But the clinical, or the more like professional answer, is you want to think about, for some kids, and this isn't across the board, it's just something you might notice as a parent, or you might not have thought of, and now when I say it, it triggers something, some kids, I use this as my plug, as Amy would too, to talk about sensory integration. our kids on the autism spectrum, they perceive senses differently than we do. So what are your senses? Like smell, touch, sound, feel. And whether you know what they are or not, sometimes it's later in their development that you even figure out what they are. And so like an example is I worked with a kid who was hypersensitive to sound, and any little sound in the background would upset him. And some kids are hypersensitive to certain types of light. Hyposensitivity means I'm less sensitive to things. I worked with a kid and he wasn't hospitalized. It wasn't that severe burn, but he got burned in the tub because he didn't react to the hot water. He didn't show any signs of it. And then we got him up and his skin was very red. And we're like, wow, he has a hyposensitivity to hot water. He doesn't feel it the way the rest of us feel it. That's true. You might not know what they are, but I'll go out on a limb and say every kid on the spectrum has some sensory integration issue. You just may not know what it is. The reason I'm talking about that is sometimes our kids on the spectrum will like the feel of peeing into their diaper. And by removing that, it makes them less likely to void in their diaper. And other kids may dig in their feces because that sensory feel of it feels good to them. So again, not the less clinical answer, do what works for you. Don't feel like you have to apologize to anyone. If you see something's working with your child, go with it. But the more clinical is if you notice that it's slowing down your progress, that might be something you want to, kind of dabble in, because if it's feeling good to pee in my diaper, well, why would I pee anywhere else? It's, what a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5-year-old might be thinking, So I know that was actually kind of a long answer to a short question, but do you want to have a follow-up question, or did I do it for you?
No, that was good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We do have a couple questions in the chat. As a follow-up to that, about wearing cloth underwear and then putting a pull-up over that to help contain the mess. So that way the child can still feel the wet sensation, but it helps cut down on the mess a little bit. And also, what is your feelings about using potty videos, such as like the Daniel Tiger videos that talk about potty training?
Can you tell me the first question again? I didn't understand.
Sure. Putting on a pair of underwear and then using a pull-up over the underwear.
I see. No, I know what you've been reading, and that's smart. And it really is, when you talk about those transitions, we talked about sensory. So if it's a sensory thing, then do or don't do that. It's up to you. It's really up to you as to what works for you and what amount of laundry you're willing to do. And that's perfectly acceptable as a method. But the second part is the thing we're really ultimately working on longer term is your child understanding cognitively and associating the bathroom is where I poop. The bathroom is where I pee. And so like with that type of thing, like let's say they like, and this is a question we get a lot. So let's say that they are starting to get number 1 in the bathroom, but they're struggling to make that connection with number 2. And so that's one of the things you can do. And I know it sounds kind of gross, but hey, we're talking about potty time, right? Is you can have the child take the diaper with the bowel movement in it, and you still praise them while you're doing this. This is still like positive. Hey, good job pooping, and let's take the diaper into the bathroom and put the BM into the potty, and then jump back into that routine as though they had done it there. You work on flushing, then hand washing, then redressing, or whatever order, whatever order is working for you. And so you want to start to make a cognitive connection. So the only reason I bring that up is that if you have 2 layers to get through, that could hold you back. But again, if it's working for you, it's working for you. So you got to do trial and error. All of these things are trial and error, because you got to figure out what steps working for you and what steps not. On part 2 question of Daniel Tiger and stuff like that, that I highly recommend. I absolutely, we had a little Daniel Tiger potty for my own child, and talking about it. And I only say that as in, like, I believe in that so much. I used it myself, video modeling. And this is, I kind of yachted past it on the slide, but it is on the slide. Gestural modeling, showing a child where you sit to go. A lot of our kids on the spectrum really respond to visually seeing something. They're very visual, right? Their visual senses are very different than ours sometimes. So as much as you can walk that fine line of, like our dad was talking about earlier, you don't want to do anything that's too weird with video stuff. But when you get into other skill sets, like hand washing or even like reading social cues on faces, video interaction is a very valuable tool. So I absolutely encourage that. And I don't see that as a negative thing to incorporate. It's just an extra tool to attempt to get success.
Hi, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So my child, he's in pull-ups, and when I'm changing him, he tries to help assist wipe. He'll even
Good.
go and get everything that's needed when he's needing to be changed, but to actually get him to sit on the potty, even with trying to give him a reinforcer, it's a challenge. What are
does
some
he do?
tips? He will not sit. Sitting still is a challenge for him. So what are some other things that I could possibly do? Like I even take him, Dad and I take him in the bathroom when we're in there and try to get him to sit on the potty, and it's just a no-go. So what are some things that we can try to do just to get him to be interested long enough to sit on the potty?
Sure. So a couple of little follow-up questions before I answer. Does he have trouble sitting still anywhere else, or are there other places in the house he'll sit fine?
It just kind of depends on his mood at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, one of the
He
things
likes
that
he
Go
likes
ahead.
our bedroom.
Okay.
He'll stay in our bedroom.
Okay. So, but he doesn't have any physical discomfort sitting, or if he's comfortable, he'll sit in a spot.
Correct.
Okay. So there's kind of two things. I'm going to undo some of what I said earlier, which, this is just for your situation.
Okay.
So the two areas I would really focus on is I would do, so rather than scheduled times,
Mm-hmm.
you can still do scheduled times. You can still
Okay.
say, okay, we're going to work on toilet training at this time, but I would pick random times.
Just to take him.
Walking by the bathroom.
Okay.
And I would make it as brief as possible. I mean, I'm talking like 5 seconds max, right?
Okay.
And have some special reinforcer that he can only get when he goes and sits on that potty. And you're walking by, and you might not even pull his pants down. You might just say, "Oh, look, we're at the bathroom, fun," and you might not even put the lid up, but just something to start to desensitize to that, and to make it so he starts dragging you to that room. He starts telling you, I want to go sit there, because, and you might spend 2 weeks on this, but just every time you walk by, and I don't, what your child wants, but you might have some, like for us, it was Skittles. So we have that special jar of Skittles. Oh, you want to go sit on the potty for 5 seconds? Here's a Skittle. Boom. We move on with our day. And that can start to really, it's called intermittent reinforcement. It's a type of reinforcement that it starts to get him to want to be empowered to do it. And then I would pick, when you're doing your actual routine, and I would pick something, and I'm just picking up on this. It sounds like your son likes to be in charge.
Yes.
Like he likes to be in control. So pick some task or some fun job that he can do during the any part of that transition, whether it's the transition to go to the bathroom, whether it's while he's sitting, just some job that's his job to do, that only he gets to do, because that makes him in charge. Now you're still really in charge, because you're deciding we're potty training, but it gives every child, every person, regardless of persons with disabilities or a child with autism or a typically developing person or child, we all deserve dignity and respect. And he deserves the dignity and respect to be a part of this journey. Like, hey, this is my journey too. So the way we can empower all people is to help them be in charge of it in the biggest way they can. So I would just random times of sitting, and see if you can stretch out that amount of time, even if it starts at just 5 seconds. It's a fun place to be. It's a fun little thing. I get a quick reward, and then I move on with my day, and then try and drag it out to where it's like 30 seconds to a minute, and then give him a job. Make it so it's your job to make this go well. How can, wow, you're doing this. Or even if it's like carrying, like, he has to carry the, like, well, instead of carrying me to the diaper changing station, carry this to the bathroom, you know, like use
Okay.
that same thing he's already associating with this task and move it to that other area, if that makes sense.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. He has an obsession with shutting doors. So could that be his special job while going to the bathroom, allowing
sounds
him
great.
to shut the door? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
take me to the bathroom, shut the door, sit on the potty, get a piece of candy, move on, or whatever it is. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be candy. It could be sing a song or whatever the fun thing that he'll go for is like, okay, you shut the door. Okay, now we sit. Okay, now you open the door, and then you get to shut the door. And he gets 2 door shuts just for one trip to the potty.
One trip to the potty. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank
You're
you
so
so
welcome.
much.
Great question.
I know everybody has questions, so no questions off limit. Feel free to jump in.
Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Doing great.
I have a question. So my son is 3 years old and I have him pretty good with peeing in the pot and everything.
Okay.
So he wears underwear to school and everything, and he does pretty good there. However, when it comes to pooping in the pot, that's when he runs and hides.
Yep.
I'm trying to look for some tips to kind of get him out of that habit. I think I've tried everything, but
Follow-up question for you. If he has he ever had a bowel movement on the potty?
yes.
Okay. So if you caught him at the right time, he would have success.
Yes.
Okay. So here's you're at that last step, and I know it's like, okay, just get us there with this last step. And so I'm gonna you have a little bit of homework you have to do. So what I would advise is our bodies are just as in sync with routine as the rest of the world. So it's night and day type of thing. So I would keep a notepad handy somewhere, wherever you change him or whatever, and write down the times of days the time of day that he's pooping. Okay. And see after a week of doing that, if there's a pattern, if there's a window of time when this is happening the most, and then schedule your toilet training routine just to match those exact times. That's the number one thing. So, because if you catch him at the right moment and you're like, okay, like we're talking about poop here, so we're gonna talk about it. Like my son, it's like clockwork. His is in the morning. He always has his big BM in the morning, So if I don't prompt him to go at the right time in that morning, we might have an accident, and I had to learn that. So try to figure out what time and then build your routine around that exact time.
Okay.
And the other thing is making it, when it happens, hold on, let me go back to this other slide. Sorry, because I didn't really talk about it. So over here on the right, when we talk about reinforcement, I put make it specific. That means you're labeling for him what he's doing. So even if he might not understand it, you're saying, oh, good job pooping in the potty. When the thing happens that you really want to have happen, do whatever the thing is that's going to communicate to him that you're really happy and that he's done a really great job. So I might even say, like, if he's mastered peeing on the potty, it's time to fade out potty party. It's not really a party. It's like, hey, you know how to do this. Like, we're not gonna have a party every time you do something you've mastered, but then save that party for when he does get it, when you catch him and he does it right. And again, I talk very loud, but I recognize that a lot of kids with autism don't like loud. So when I'm working with a kid that doesn't like loud, I don't talk loud. So it might not be, being big, but whatever it is that's save that really big, great thing to do and try to pair it for that exact moment that you catch it. So you got to take some notes, you got to be ready, but then you also got to have that, whatever that thing is that's going to be super rewarding for him, available right when he does it, so that you can label, oh, you're pooping in the potty, like, this is great, like, this is the moment, like, you did it. And the more times you get that, the more times that pairing of, this is where I do this is the reward I get for doing this. So you want to keep track of your schedule so you know when it's most likely to happen. And then when you catch it, that's the time to, woohoo, big potty party.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And additionally, I just want to make a note for those of you that are struggling with having BMs in the potty. A lot of our kids have constipation issues. I am going to do a weekly session about some of those types of other issues that maybe are not part of the diagnostics of autism, but sort of what we call our comorbid things that happen at the same time. And constipation is one of those. It's very common, particularly when you have kids that have more limited diets and they won't eat a lot of fiber vegetables and things like that. So making sure they have enough free water in their diet, not just juice or milk, but free plain water. If you are going to do juice, pear juice and prune juice do help with bowel movements. They're not necessarily as tasty as our apple and orange juice that most of our kids probably like, but they do help as well. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more in a few weeks about this. Another suggestion is physical activity. A lot of kids are very much sitting and doing things, making sure that they're getting up, that they're moving around, that they're using their bodies. That helps our bowels kind of move things through. But to go back to what Chris had said in the very beginning, to rule out anything that's truly medical, that if your child is having a constipation issue, to talk that over with your pediatrician before trying anything medical to intervene.
Any more questions, guys? Okay, well, before Amy wraps us up, I'll just use this opportunity as, kind of my last plug that we're BHWC and we're located by UNC Charlotte. If you want more information about our organization, you can look us up or contact Amy. And if you have a question that you didn't feel comfortable asking, please reach out to her and we'll both be available to answer it one-on-one. Or if you hit a roadblock and you think of just something, man, I wish I'd asked later on, please don't hesitate to reach out, no charge or anything like that. We're available and I'll be happy to have a follow-up meeting with any family one-on-one to discuss individual things going on with your child.
We have one more question. How do we get our son to feel comfortable going into the potty or into the bathroom or toilet?
Yeah, and before I, go full circle with personal experience with that one, I worked with a family, and when we started out, they were, it was full on meltdown. And so I'm not saying that you're at that stage yet, but maybe you are. But we were at a point where when I went in to start doing toilet training with their child, he would kick, bite, everything to not go in there. And so the first thing I said to the parent was, hey, you got to give me some time. Maybe now's not the right time to work on toilet training with him. First, I have to make this a fun, safe place to go again. So for the first 2 weeks, kind of like I was talking about with mom whose son doesn't like to sit on the potty a few minutes ago, we just made it a fun party just to go in there. And so for him, just walking to the bathroom, well, we changed a lot of the way it looked in there to make it more welcoming. We put some of his favorite stuff up, like the stickers that go on the wall. We put a special reinforcer in there that he could only have when he went in there. It was this toy that you would push and it would like play a song for you. And so I would be working with him on other activities and doing ABA with him. And then when we would walk by, if he just initiated towards that bathroom, that was a reward and that was a praise. And then if he could push the door open and peek in there and flip it on and off the lights, and then we would run away. I turned it into a game to go just to the bathroom. And then once he was walking through the threshold of the door and we got in there, there were fun activities and we started hanging out in there and like playing games. So it was a process, but I say only, but that's in the world of autism, we know time is measured differently. It only took 2 weeks, but it went from full on tantrum to go into the bathroom to I'm excited to go into this area. And then we reinitiated our toilet training schedule and routine because we made that a fun, safe place to go again finally. So see how that matches into where you're at in your journey. I mean, you may not be full on, this is a terrible place to go or whatever, but just incorporate that positive reinforcement structure and use any little opportunity to go in, and then engineer that environment, make it a fun, happy place to go. And that's step one. Like you hit the nail on the head, is we got to go in the bathroom if we're going to successfully potty train in the bathroom. So yeah.
I know you all can do this. I have faith in every single one of you that you can do this. And you guys all know, if you've been with my program before, that I am an autism parent too. And I was able to potty train our son. He did take some time to do it, but we did get there. And at 18 years old, I am not wiping tushies. He is responsible for his own tushy. But I want you guys to know that this is a process. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. Those of you that have already started, you know that it takes a little bit of time. You may be a little frustrated with the process right now, and with everything else that we're all dealing with. You know, give yourself the love and grace that you are doing the best that you can. And we will continue to work through this. If you have other questions, you can always send those to me. I'm going to be sending out some information next week that kind of goes along with our presentation. And as Chris said, if you have some specific questions that you'd like follow up, I'll be providing his information as well. Before we wrap up, those of you again that have been part of our program before know that I am a state funded program, and states like to see that there's a lot of data. So if you could please, before logging off, if you would please take just a moment to fill out this survey about today's program. There's only 7 questions. I will be reaching out to new families in the next week or 2 just to check in with you guys, but otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have not joined us on our weekly programming, please be looking for further information about that. I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. And remember that these are your tribe of people. These are the people that are going through what you're going through. So let's all do it together. Thanks for having us into your homes this morning, and have a great rest of your day and weekend. And please enjoy the holidays that are coming up if you are celebrating, and if not, just enjoy the fall. Thanks, guys.